The U.S. legal system. Businesses in this country are very heavily regulated, and they're subject to a number of laws, both criminal and civil. They're subject to the laws passed by the federal government, they're subject to laws passed by the states, and by even lower levels of government, such as municipalities or certain level districts. But how do these actual laws apply? And most importantly, if you have a disagreement with someone, or you've been aggrieved or have to suffer some kind of abuse under the law, how do you vindicate your rights? The U.S. legal system consists of both state and federal courts, and numerous rules determine which courts can hear a particular dispute, otherwise known as the concept of jurisdiction. And there are a number of different kinds of jurisdictions that have to be considered, and jurisdictional issues determine which court hears a particular business dispute between parties. The first concept of jurisdiction is the concept of original versus appellate jurisdiction. This is nothing more than a way of saying which court gets to hear the matter first. Trial courts are courts of original jurisdiction. They're the first ones to hear a particular dispute. That's the court in which parties would introduce documents, have witnesses testify, and try to establish for a judge or a jury what the facts are in a particular dispute. In that quorum and in that case, the judge would then apply the law to those facts as found by the jury to reach an outcome for that dispute. Which party would win, perhaps what damages they would receive, and how much. From that point, the parties may still disagree about the outcome of the court decision. If that's the case, they would then proceed to an appellate court. From every original court, there is a court of appellate jurisdiction, which is nothing more than a way of saying which appellate court gets to consider that dispute after the trial court has considered it. Whatever court has appellate jurisdiction over that case would then review the evidence that was produced at the trial court and make a determination of whether or not the court properly applied the law to the facts as established below. Another concept of jurisdiction is personal versus subject matter jurisdiction. This is the distinction between the jurisdiction over the person or property to hear that particular dispute versus the power to hear a particular type of dispute. Personal jurisdiction is when a court has the ability to make a party appear in front of it. It's a big country, and obviously with a lot of states, you could have somebody who's engaged in business in Columbus, Ohio, where Franklin University is located, doing business with somebody in Washington State, clear across the country. If a business dispute arises, can the Washington company force the person who lives in Ohio to show up in a Washington court? That's the concept of personal jurisdiction, whether they have jurisdiction over the persons involved in a particular dispute. Subject matter jurisdiction, on the other hand, is whether or not a court has the ability to hear the subject matter or the topic of the dispute. And there's a balance between federal and state courts and what they can consider in this regard. Federal courts have some area of exclusive jurisdiction. For example, bankruptcy disputes and patent disputes have to be heard in federal court. On the other hand, state courts have some areas of exclusive jurisdiction as well. For example, family law issues or divorce law, those kind of issues are resolved exclusively by state courts. Other than that, they are courts of concurrent jurisdiction, which means that by and large, federal courts and Ohio and state courts overlap a lot in what types of disputes they can hear. State courts can hear just about anything that is not a matter of federal exclusive jurisdiction. Federal courts, on the other hand, though, have a little bit narrower subject matter jurisdiction. They can hear any matter that involves federal law. So if there's a claim in the case that involves federal law, a federal court in that area has jurisdiction. It also has jurisdiction over what are called diversity suits. Those are suits involving people from different states where there is at least $75,000 in controversy. If that's satisfied, then that case can be heard in federal court as well as state court. Finally, there are some other considerations that establish whether or not somebody can bring an actual lawsuit to seek redress for injuries. And these are the concepts of standing, case or controversy requirement, and ripeness. The first one, standing, establishes that only people who have a real vested concrete interest in the outcome can bring a lawsuit. That's the concept of standing. I have to have personal standing to bring that suit in this court. If I don't have standing, I don't have any kind of an interest in the outcome at all, I can't bring the suit. The court doesn't have jurisdiction to consider it. There also has to be an active case or controversy. There has to be a real dispute between the parties that the court can act on and resolve. If it's just some kind of a hypothetical dispute or some potential dispute in the future, there's no actual case or controversy and the court lacks jurisdiction. Finally, the case has to be ripe. There has to be some action that the court can take right now to resolve the dispute between the parties. If the dispute still hasn't happened yet, or if it's something that's already happened and the court can't possibly fix, the matter is not yet ripe. And again, the court lacks jurisdiction. As long as the court has jurisdiction, it can hear the dispute and resolve it between the parties.